Jonathan Lemire is staff writer at The Atlantic, co-host of Morning Joe, and author of The Big Lie. Ambassador Michael McFaul, former ambassador to Russia. Thank you so much, both of you, for being here. Talk, Jonathan, about, shall we call it mixed messaging?
It's mixed messaging, but there's only one voice that really matters here, and that's President Trump's. I mean, the Treasury Secretary, the Speaker of the House, whoever it might be, they can offer some reassurances, they can offer some platitudes. Secretary of State Rubio did himself a few days ago here to European allies. But this is more than most administrations. This is one that really has a singular voice, and that is President Trump. And he has only ratcheted up his rhetoric in recent days about Greenland, pointedly refusing to take military options off the table, even as those around him think that economic means, tariffs, trade deals, the like, would be the preferred route. But he's made it clear he wants Greenland. But Europe very much has made clear that Greenland is not available. And as the president, in a few hours, will get on Air Force One and head to Davos. I know we're going to hear from him at the White House briefing room podium in just a few minutes. When he lands tomorrow, could be a defining moment for U.S.-European relations, certainly for the NATO alliance, which has safeguarded peace, prosperity, the spread of democracy on both sides of the Atlantic, and is in real danger if President Trump follows through on these threats and tries to seize an island that is mostly ice and rock.
Of course, Ambassador Jonathan is very right on that. We just heard what Donald Trump had to say. Look, we have to have it. They have to have this done. They can't protect it. We are hearing the polar opposite from leaders of European countries. We're in a dispute now with the UK. What are you watching for tomorrow at Davos?
I'm hoping that people will speak rationally about why this is such an idiotic, stupid idea that has nothing to do with American national security, has nothing to do with our prosperity, and has everything to do with the president's personal vanity. And I hope they speak forcefully with him about it. If we want to protect Greenland, we can put bases there. We have bases all over the world protecting our deterrence, including missiles, including radars for missile defense in Poland and Romania. We can do that if we want to, but that's not what the president wants. He wants Greenland to become Trumpland, and then he wants to be known in history as the American president who expanded the United States of America. And I hope that there will be a forceful rejection of that very bad idea, which would be consistent, by the way, with the vast majority of Americans who also don't understand why we need to annex Greenland when we have other bigger problems here at home.
I think it's about a 70% opposition in one recent poll. Jonathan, EU Commissioner Ursula von der Leyen said this about the new hostility confronting Europe, quoting here, "Nostalgia will not bring back the old order. If this change is permanent, then Europe must change permanently too," which raises questions about what this might mean, as you point out, for the entire relationship going forward. And is it at the point, could it be at the point, where members of Congress look at taking action stronger than they have up until now?
Those are such strong words from the head of the EU. We heard something similar from the Prime Minister of Canada today, another NATO member, suggesting that this is a rupture point for the globe, and that these nations need to revisit and reevaluate their relations to others, that frankly the United States cannot be dependent upon any longer. As far as Washington goes, you're right. We've seen public opinion suggest Americans don't want this, and a lot of lawmakers don't either. In fact, we have heard some Republicans be more willing to speak out against this potential acquisition of Greenland than they are on most things, even when they disagree with President Trump. But what actions they'll take remains to be seen. Senator Tillis today said that Congress would look into some of the tariff powers and some in terms of financial means to defund some of the president's priorities if he continues to go along with this. But that's just words. President Trump has been able to ignore Congress throughout most of this. There was some thought that the Supreme Court would continue to wait for the Supreme Court to weigh in on the legality of President Trump's tariffs. Had they done so today, that would have at least temporarily removed one of the weapons in his arsenal to threaten Europe. But the Supreme Court continues to delay. They have not done so. So yes, there could be pushback at home, but it seems like President Trump is simply not bothered, even if this is one of many factors that could, if polling continues to remain consistent, could doom his party at next year's midterms later this year.
Ambassador, Donald Trump obviously is a businessman, and there are many people who suggest he was basically in the acquisition business, and this is just another acquisition, something he has set his sights on. But he will be addressing an audience of other very successful executives tomorrow. Do you think there's anyone there, business leaders, world leaders, who have any influence over him when it comes to this kind of issue? Can someone get in his ear?
I hope so. I mean, President Trump does tend to listen to billionaires more than even the citizens of the United States of America. He's proven that time and time again. He does back down when pressed, right? If you look at his record, he bullies small countries that try to appease him, and he backed down with Xi Jinping. And I hope that Europe will stand united and push back on the president, because it's not in our national interest. I just want to keep stressing that. We might want to blow up NATO, but NATO will remain. Just like we pulled us out of the Trans-Pacific Partnership, it still remains. And when you hear Secretary Bessent said we don't want to go alone, this is a policy that means we will go alone. And it will have real consequences for America's security and prosperity, even for traveling to Europe, folks. Forget about visa-free travel in Europe. Stand in line for a long time. There will be sanctions against America. We've got to just knock off this horrible idea. And I hope the president's not going to listen to me. I hope he will listen to those billionaires in Davos. Nobody thinks this is a good idea for the free world or for the United States of America.